It's an interview. Had I known, I would have loved to have personally greeted him and then asked him why LA City Council member Curran Price is being criminally prosecuted for allegations of misconduct similar to the conflict of interest violations for which former City Council member Kevin De Leon is only being fined. What's that about, Mr. DA? In fairness to Mr. Hochman, it was former DA George Gascon who actually filed felony charges against Councilman Price. I opined then on how these criminal charges against Price did not pass the smell test. I was concerned then that this was yet another wayward prosecution of a high-profile black elected, not to mention a waste of taxpayer money. I am even more convinced now that this is a hot mess. To be clear, neither you or I want a bunch of self-serving, greedy, conflict of interest criminals managing the people's business inside LA City Hall. But we also don't want selective or targeted prosecution of black politicians. We've seen that movie before, and we don't need a sequel. It's hard to watch Kevin De Leon get away with paying an $18,000 fine for repeated ethics violations, what he calls an oversight, and at the same time, watch the DA's office continue its criminal prosecution of Curran Price for issues allegedly involving his wife's clients. Motions, I might add, that were passed unanimously by the LA City Councilman. What are you saying, Tavis? I'm glad you asked. DA Hochman did not start this inquisition, but he certainly has the power to stop it. I have said it before, and I will say it again. Fundamental fairness. In the absence of fundamental fairness, we experience a cascade of deteriorating conditions. The erosion of trust, the weakening of social cohesion, alienation, marginalization, the legitimacy of authority diminishes, cynicism and disengagement grow, and ultimately, people abandon civic participation altogether. Fundamental fairness, Mr. Hochman, that's all we ask. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Habemus Papum. We have a new pope. A pope from the city of Chicago. Born and raised in Dalton, Illinois, my former congressional district. Served in Peru as cardinal and bishop, and at age 69 years old, he is young enough to serve as pope long enough to reestablish moral authority in world discourse. These are very serious times, and on our show, we only have very serious people. Today, Congressman Robert Bobby Scott has represented Virginia's 3rd Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives since 1993. Prior to his service in Congress, he served 15 years in the Virginia General Assembly. Congressman Scott serves as the ranking member of the Committee on Education and the Workforce, his 6th term as committee's Democratic leader. In this role, he spearheaded critical parts of Congress's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Through several COVID-19 packages, including the American Rescue Plan Act, Congressman Scott saved the pensions of over 1 million workers and retirees. reduced the number of uninsured Americans to record lows, significantly reduced child hunger across the nation, and delivered the single largest investment to K through 12 schools in U.S. history to help schools reopen safely and make up for lost learning time. Congressman Scott also serves on the Committee on the Budget and formerly served on the Committee on the Judiciary. He remains a leading voice in Congress on fiscal policy, the Constitution, and reforming our nation's criminal justice system. He has successfully worked to pass bipartisan legislation to reduce mandatory minimum sentences, reform the juvenile justice system, and require reporting and federal data collection of deaths that occur in police custody, jails, and prisons. Congressman Scott resides in Newport News, Virginia, and is a graduate of Harvard College and Boston College of Law. He also served in the Massachusetts National Guard and the United States Army Reserve. Congressman Bobby Scott, welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Jesse, it's good to see you again.
It is an honor to see you, Congressman, and I'm so grateful that you are on our program. We have about 3 minutes before we come to the break. Let me first check in with you. How are you doing?
Well, we're doing okay. It's President's keeping us busy. Every hour on hour, there's something new coming out that we have to respond to. And most of it is negative. A lot of lawsuits are being filed, most of them successful in joining many of the illegal activities of this administration. So we're busy. They're trying to pass a budget, and we're obviously you're funding tax cuts for the rich and cutting Medicaid, access to higher education, and SNAP benefits. You don't expect much Democratic support, and they're not getting any. So we're fighting that battle as we speak.
Congressman, share with us, unlike any other presidential administration since 1993, since you've served, the sheer amount of executive orders and some of the challenges, literally, to everything that you've ever fought for, that we've ever fought for as a people, are under attack.
Well, it's not just the number of executive orders, it's the number of executive orders that have no basis in law. And that's been the challenge. Every time he files an executive order, that most of them are borderline legal, and we file suits. He's actively under at least 50 injunctions right now for trying to do things that you can't do. You can't do that. And so the really unprecedented nature of the executive orders isn't really the number. It's it's a casual attitude he takes towards the Constitution and the law generally. I mean, he was asked by a reporter, do you have to follow the Constitution? And he said he didn't know. I mean, are you kidding me? How do you not know? He has very little regard for the other two branches of government, and our job is to step up and make sure we claim the responsibility of the legislative branch and the judicial branch. The problem we've got now is that the majority in the legislative branch has shown no interest in checking his excesses. It's well known that Congress has the sole power to declare war, and just through misuse and no response, the president has pretty much absorbed that power. And if we want it back, we got to take it back. But I think Congress has said it really doesn't want to be involved in that. We'd rather sit on the sidelines and complain if it doesn't go well. But there's another power we have, and that is setting tariffs. The president just set them. Now, if Congress doesn't do anything, we've essentially ceded that power to the president. And the majority in Congress, the Republican majority, has shown no interest in doing anything about that. As a matter of fact, they've shown no interest in things that are obviously dubious legality, and certainly things that need to be looked into. Like, you mentioned that I'm the lead Democrat on the Education and Workforce Committee. Doge and Elon Musk were going through the Department of Labor computer systems, and I just asked, well, what does he have access to?
Jesse, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, the best and brightest on Capitol Hill, Congressman Bobby Scott is our very special guest.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580. If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You gotta live in the reality because this is it. Every day you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial because yes it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle and if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. Really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community. And as a people, we've apologized for so much. But when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
It's been said that when someone you love has Parkinson's, you have Parkinson's.
The Parkinson's Foundation knows that the disease doesn't just affect the diagnosed. It affects everyone who supports and helps care for them.
If you have questions, the Parkinson's Foundation has answers.
We can help you understand the disease
and give you tips for living a better life.
Find your answers at parkinson.org or call 1-800-473-4636. The Parkinson's Foundation. Better lives together.
Find mom's best gift at Target. Now through Mother's Day, get up to 40% off gifts for her. Discover trendy apparel and swimwear that'll elevate any wardrobe. Jewelry that'll make her smile shine brighter, and even chocolate that'll turn any moment into something sweeter. There are endless options to choose from to show her she's the best. Hurry! Save 20 to 40% on select apparel, jewelry, chocolates, and more this Mother's Day only at Target. Restrictions apply.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is one of Congress's stalwart leaders, the best and brightest that we have in the Congress of the United States, a champion of social justice, civil rights, not only for Virginians, but for all Americans. Congressman Bobby Scott, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Well, thank you, Jesse, and it's good to be here.
Congressman, just before the break, you were going through a litany. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we have to pay the advertisers.
You said you warned me 3 minutes, and I think I went about 4. So
this is our longest. This is our longest segment, so I'm going to let you blow.
I was talking about what Doge was doing in the Department of Labor. They were going all through the computer systems, and nobody knows what they're doing. I asked whether or not he had access to investigation files. I know that Musk and his companies are under investigation by at least 3 agencies within the Department of Labor. The NLRB for unfair labor practices, OSHA for unsafe workplaces, OFCCP for discriminatory practices. He's under investigation. Does he have access to the files so he can find out who the confidential witnesses are? Does he have access to job numbers before they become public? If he's bidding on a contract, can he see his competitors' bids before he has to submit his bid?
Wow.
I'm just asking. We can't get the Republicans to join in, and you know that if you ask from the minority party, they don't have to answer because we can't subpoena without a majority vote, and we can't get the Republicans to even join in on asking the question, not do anything, just ask the question. And so there's a process called resolution of inquiry where you make a motion in the committee. I move that we ask these questions, and then they turn around and vote the motion down.
Wow.
So we can't even get answers to basic questions to know what they're doing. And if there's misconduct, they are, and Martin Luther King said it a long time ago, that it's not the reprehensible conduct of our enemies, it's the appalling silence of good people that people are going to have to really account for. And you have Republicans who have shown zero interest in getting any facts to find out what's going on. They're closing down the department. They're trying to close down the Department of Education. Well, what are the plans? We ask, what are the plans? And they won't join in the question. We don't get the answers. So they've been keeping us busy along those lines. But the challenge, and I think really the threat to democracy is not Donald Trump. It's the Republicans in Congress who will not even ask a question about what's going on.
Congressman, let me help our viewers and our listeners for just a moment here. I share with people all across the country, there is no such thing as a local congressman. It takes 218 members of Congress to get anything done, to pass a bill, to pass a resolution, to send something, some vehicle to the Senate, where you need another majority. And then after reconciliation, it goes to the president for his signature, where he has the opportunity to veto it, the legislation, or to sign it into law. And so when Congressman Scott says, we ask these questions all the way from Virginia, he's asking questions for people in Los Angeles and California. He's also asking questions for people who live in Chicago and Atlanta, Georgia, and Miami, and every state in the union. So when Congressman Scott says, we can't get any answers, these aren't just Congressman Scott's questions for the state of Virginia. He's asking on behalf of all of the American people, which means the alarm bell that Congressman Scott is sharing with us on this show certainly suggests that we are looking at a 3-alarm fire. Congressman Scott, can you comment on that?
And you're exactly right. And the fact is that the vote is very close. All we need is 4 or 5 Republicans to join us, and we have a majority asking the question, which when it comes from a majority, then you have the implied threat of a subpoena if it is not answered. And without that, if you don't have a single Republican joining you and asking the question, then it has the implied threat of no subpoena, so you don't get an answer. And that's been the frustrating thing, the appalling silence of the Republicans, not even willing to ask a question.
You know, one of the challenges that many of us who are no longer in the bubble of the Capitol itself are sensing is that we keep hearing not only Donald Trump's polling numbers, the worst in the last 70 years of any United States president, but it also suggests that within the resistance movement, Democrats in the Congress of the United States, that the American people are not hearing their voices, and therefore their polling numbers seemingly are less than the president of the United States. My question to you is, Congressman, there's 60 African Americans in Congress, the most we've had since Second Reconstruction, and getting their voices out. Congressman Bobby Scott, again, from Virginia, representing all of us. If your congressman isn't speaking up, well, Congressman Bobby Scott is speaking up. What can be done on Capitol Hill to convince the American people that you are resisting, that you are fighting back, that you are asking the right questions?
Well, the problem is that Congress works as a group, and the majority defines the direction of the group. And when you have the majority voting in absolute unanimous lockstep, it's hard to have anything but that majority position heard. We've asked questions. We have made motions. We've done everything we can. There are opportunities, and I think one of the, frankly, disappointing aspects was when we did have a legislative opportunity. That is when the continuing resolution to fund the government for the rest of the year was before us. The House Democrats, including the Black Caucus, was unanimous, but so was the Republicans were virtually unanimous, and they had by one vote cushion, they were able to pass that budget. But when it got over to the Senate, they needed to break the filibuster, so they needed 60 votes, which meant that they could not move without Democratic votes. And people were disgusted because the Democrats provided those votes and allowed the process to continue, where they could have stopped the proceedings and at least gotten something to show for those votes, like we'll continue we'll continue funding, but there'll be no cuts in Medicaid. There'll be no cuts in Social Security. There'll be no cuts in Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security. No cuts in SNAP. You will spend the money according to the law, the way it's passed. You said bills pass the House, the Senate, signed by the president. Well, that's what the budget goes through, and it's a law. And you can't pick and choose, well, I'm going to spend this money, but not that money. No, the law says you got to spend all the money. And when I don't know how you've been there when you're doing a budget together. Well, I'll vote for it, but only if I get this in it. Well, if you can get people agreeing to a budget based on that, and then the president says, well, I'm not going to spend it. Well, how are you going to negotiate a budget? They'll give you anything you want, but just not going to fund it. And that's the problem. And you've got the budget coming up again. They're trying to pass an amendment to this year's budget, which has been really the focus of attention, massive tax cuts for the wealthy, and they're going to pay for some of it by cutting Medicaid, SNAP benefits, and higher education. And then end up with a worse budget deficit than they started off with anyway. Now they said, well, there's no Medicaid cuts in the framework that passed. Yeah, but you said the framework says $880 billion coming out of the Committee on Energy and Commerce. They don't have $880 billion worth of programs in there without touching Medicaid. That's why Congressional Budget Office said that based on the framework, if you pass a appropriations a budget consistent with the framework that passed, you got to go into Medicaid big time.
You know, Bobby, let me just ask this question and lay it in a kind of theological framework for our listeners. The Bible says where your treasury is, your heart will follow. It does not say where your heart is. That's how you can tell real politicians who know what they're talking about. Where your heart is, your treasury will follow. That does not happen. My heart is for you and healthcare, but there's no budget. But when Bobby Scott says that the budget does not equal where they say they are and where our priorities are, it is a red alarm fire for all Americans. Bobby, you're on the budget committee. What are the challenges and the dangers of the budget that the Republicans in Congress are considering that every American should know about?
Well, the first problem with discussing a budget with Republicans is that they do not believe, they don't believe in science. If you've been on the budget committee time, you'll learn that they don't believe in arithmetic. They will give speeches. They give better speeches than Democrats. I'll have to concede that. But we had an 11-hour budget committee hearing to pass that framework. And they talked about the reprehensible debt that we run up and deficits every year, just adding to that debt, just horrible. And they talked for hours on end about how horrible the deficit, annual deficit, adding to the debt. And then you look at the document you're voting on, it makes the deficit worse this year.
Wow.
Now, I'll tell you something that will surprise most Americans because they've been listening to the speeches. Every president, every Democratic president administration since Kennedy has left for the Republicans a better deficit situation than they inherited. Every Republican president since Nixon has left for the Democrats a worse deficit situation than they inherited. And this is no different. So it's just like clockwork. Here, a Republican president comes in, they take Biden's deficit and they're going to make it worse. Biden took Trump's deficit and made it better. Obama took Bush's deficit and made it better. Trump messed it up. I mean, just like clockwork. But you would think, listening to the speeches, that the Democrats were the fiscally irresponsible ones. But the only and you listen to them talk about both sides. Only both sides about it is that the Democrats don't clean up the Republican mess as quick as they make it. Clinton's budget. You mentioned I was voted as elected. Started serving in '93. First big vote I cast was on Clinton's budget, which ended up not only eliminating the debt, but going into surplus, so much surplus that we could have paid off the entire national debt by 2008, held by the public, and put all the money back into trust funds by 2013. Bush came in, massive tax cuts without paying for them, 2 wars without paying for them, prescriptive drug benefit didn't pay for them, and all of a sudden you're back in the ditch. But they give better speeches than we do.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, our very special guest is Congressman Bobby Scott, one of the most knowledgeable members of the Congress of the United States, one of the hardest fighters in the Congress of the United States. We're going to talk tariffs, wars, and anything else Congressman Bobby Rush wants to share with the American people. When we got a mighty Congressman Bobby Scott, I called you my first congressional district former Congressman, Congressman Bobby Rush. Congressman Bobby Scott, thank you very much for being my special guest when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Tensions flared outside of a Grand Rapids, Michigan courthouse as protesters clashed during jury deliberations in the trial of ex-officer Christopher Shore, charged with killing a black man, Patrick Luoya.
I think that they are really weighing the options and the facts, and I really, truly hope that they come up with something soon.
The jury is deadlocked, but was told to keep trying. One person was arrested. Jurors are in deliberations today in the Tyree Nichols murder trial. 3 former Memphis officers are charged with beating him to death back in 2023. That was caught on video. None of the former officers testified. And a Lending Tree survey shows 77% of parents say raising kids is more expensive than expected, with nearly half having fewer children due to costs. The average cost to raise a child now is nearly $300,000, up 36% in 2 years. A $5,000 baby bonus is reportedly under consideration. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Think It Up is an initiative to activate student-powered, teacher-led learning projects. Students and teachers, how can you spark great learning experiences in your classrooms today? Join at thinkitup.org.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
It's a good time to be a New York Knicks fan. The Knicks pulled off another come-from-behind win at Boston to take a 2-0 lead in the best-of-7 Eastern Conference semifinals in the NBA playoffs. A 91-90 victory gives the Knicks a huge advantage over the defending NBA champions. The next 2 games are in New York. Game 3 is Saturday afternoon at Madison Square Garden. In a text to Shedeur Sanders, future Hall of Fame quarterback Tom Brady told Deion's son to use his fall in the NFL draft as motivation. Brady has become a mentor to Sanders, who fell from a projected first-round pick to the 5th round on day 3. Sanders is one of 5 quarterbacks on the Cleveland Browns roster. The list includes Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, and Deshaun Watson. Brady can speak from experience. He was a 7th-round pick of New England in 2000. Brady won 7 Super Bowls and was a 3-time NFL MVP. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk Radio. that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, aka the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month. If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
KBLA Talk 1580 and the California Black Chamber of Commerce invite you to the Small Business Development Workshop, How to Do Business with California Government, on Thursday, May 15th at Victory Park in Pasadena, 2575 Paloma Street. Get certified and register as a new bidder. Sell products and services to the state. Learn about pre-bid events and more. And it's all free. All you have to do is sign up at www.calbcc.org. That's www.calbcc.org. Registration for the Small Business Development Workshop, How to Do Business with California Government, begins at 9 a.m. and the workshop concludes at 1 p.m. on Thursday, May 15th at Victory Park in Pasadena, 2575 Paloma Street. This is a community call to action from the California Black Chamber of Commerce and KBLA Talk 1580. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is Congressman Bobby Scott. Congressman Bobby Scott serves on the Committee on the Budget, formerly served on the Committee on the Judiciary. He remains a leading voice in Congress on fiscal policy, the Constitution, and reforming our nation's criminal justice system. He successfully worked to pass bipartisan legislation to reduce mandatory minimum sentences, reform juvenile justice system, and require reporting and federal data collections of deaths that occur in police custody, jails, and prisons. Congressman Bobby Scott, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Well, thank you, Jesse. It's good to be here.
Congressman, I want to, before I pivot to criminal justice and the outstanding work, your history in this particular area, on the outside looking in, I mean, tariffs strike me in the way in which the president is using them without congressional authorization as some kind of shakedown. I mean, he invites businesses to the Oval Office with insider information. He uses tariffs, the markets crash or they diminish, they go down. Every indices suggests that. Then he announces the pausing of the tariffs, the markets go back up, and then he turns to his buddies and say, hey, you just made $2 billion. Oh man, what is everyone complaining about? You just made $900 million. I mean, that would lock up anybody on earth. if they had the power to leverage that. That's a profound ethical problem. And I raised the question of tariffs because the revenue that comes from these tariffs obviously impact the available revenue for Congress to make a judgment about what it does and or does not do for the American people. Your thoughts, Congressman, before we pivot to criminal justice?
Well, you left something out, and that is that after the market went down, he sent out a tweet with the market down saying now's a good time to buy. And
wow.
then took back most of the tariffs, and the market went up probably one, if not the most, one of the highest point gains in the history of the Dow Jones Industrial Average.
But that would lock up anybody on earth.
We understand that the Securities and Exchange Commission may be investigating it. If they're not, that would be a scandal. But the jury is out on the tariffs the way he did it. When he offered the tariffs and explained what they were, the market went down. The market just collapsed. He had 24 hours to explain it again. The more he explained it, the lower the market went. When he reversed himself, the market recovered. I mean, the jury has spoken. They're ignorant. So, I mean, anybody with that evidence in front of them that wants to defend the tariffs, I mean, that's just comical. They don't work. Now, you could say tariffs another way, tariffs intelligently applied. Okay, you have something to talk about. The way he did it, the jury has spoken. And so everything about that is part of the problem with the economy, and most of the Republican, the way they address problems is that they don't solve problems. They complain and blame. They identify a problem and then just complain about it. And then people assume that anybody complaining about it that much must be doing something about it. So that's who I want in there. Like inflation. They complained about inflation and then blamed the Democrats. The Republicans never have, or even had a plan to deal with inflation. They just complained about it. Now, go back to the beginning of the Biden administration where inflation is coming in. You had global inflation, wasn't anybody's fault, but you had inflation. What did the Democrats do? We put money in your pocket so you could buy the eggs. A family of four, modest income, average, $60,000 income. We get you, if you family of four, you got $5,000 in some for stimulus checks. You got $6,000 in child tax credits. That's 11. And then you got extra money on enhanced SNAP benefits. You got about $15,000 in your pocket. You can buy some eggs. Did it work? Child poverty dropped 50%, almost 50%. And credit card delinquencies at the end of the first year of the Biden, after all we did, credit card delinquencies, lowest in 30 years. Okay. What was the Republican plan? Complain about it. And then blame the Democrats. And they complained so loud that when people voted on the issue of inflation, 2-1, they're voting Republican. And that's how they deal with all the problems. Complain about it and blame them. Look at their immigration. They don't have an immigration plan. They got the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Where's the bill? Where's the bill? No, they're going to complain about it and blame the Democrats and get the votes. There's no plan. So if any issue you got out there, you have to be very careful to make sure they don't get away with just complaining about it and blaming the Democrats. That you have to insist that if you're going to complain about it, you have to propose a solution. And on inflation, they never proposed a solution. On immigration, they had an immigration plan that came out of the Senate. You remember the Senate plan? Rubio was in the front of it when he started running for president. They started criticizing him. He dropped support of his own bill. And that's the last you heard of it. They won't even support their own legislation that might solve the problem. They want the politics. And there's good politics in complaining and blaming, and they've been getting away with it. And we have to stop letting them get away with it by pointing out that these people have no plan. They're just complaining and whining. Talk about the budget. They complain about the deficits, complain about the debt. And then you look at the legislation they're producing. They're complaining about, oh, if we don't pass this budget busting legislation, we're going to accuse you of raising taxes. Well, you can accuse us of anything you want. You got the House, you got the Senate, and you got the presidency. Where's your legislation? They can't do it because all they're doing is complaining and blaming.
Bobby, let me ask you this question, because we have about 2 minutes before the break, and I know we're going to deal with criminal justice on the other side of the break, along with your words of hope for all of our listeners to conclude our program. But let me ask you this question. On this, they offer, complain about it, give better speeches than us. Do you sense from the American people that these midterms will be any different, that the American people can actually hear what is taking place on our side of the aisle with respect to why they should vote for Democrats? Because it seems like in the hopelessness of the moment, and again, we have about a minute and a half before the break, in the hopelessness of not being heard, I'm not so sure that is translating into why we must vote in 2026.
Well, they just make stuff up, and it's difficult to have a debate with people who are just making stuff up. Our responsibility is to tell the truth and hope that breaks through, and people will hear what the choices are. I thought we had a fairly good presentation of the difference between candidates in the last presidential election. You had one candidate, can't we all get along? Democrats and Republicans working together, housing, jobs, healthcare. And the other is, if you put me back in there, I'm going to get my enemies. That was the choice. They went for they went with Trump, but the choice was there. People knew what the choice was, and hopefully they'll see when you choose wrong, elections have consequences.
I don't think there's a greater champion before we come forward in the Congress of the United States that's clearer than Congressman Bobby Scott. I'd love to see him on MSNBC. I'd like to see him on CNN. I'd like to see him on every major news program speaking on our behalf. He makes the most sense. He's a champion for those of us who have done time, who paid our debt to society and seek the forgiveness of the American people. He's a champion of ending mandatory minimums and looking at cases case by case and using justice and mercy as a basis for bringing people and restoring people's lives. When we come forward, we're going to talk with Congressman Bobby Scott in our final segment on his extraordinary efforts, why he's a hero amongst those of us who have experienced the criminal justice system. And we hope Congressman Bobby Scott will end us on a word of hope. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. show, Congressman Bobby Scott, who's represented the 3rd Congressional District of Virginia since 1993, one of our best and brightest.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Nearly 7 million Americans aged 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's disease, also known as AD, a type of dementia that affects memory, thinking, and behavior, making everyday tasks challenging. But did you know that Black adults aged 65 and older are twice as likely as white adults to develop AD? There are things you can do to help reduce your risk for developing AD. Managing conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure is crucial. Staying physically active, maintaining social connections, eating a healthy diet, and keeping your mind engaged with activities like reading or puzzles can all contribute to brain health. It's also important to recognize some common signs and symptoms of early AD, such as forgetfulness that causes problems with everyday life, asking the same question a few times in a row, and difficulty concentrating on basic tasks. If you see these signs in yourself or a loved one, don't wait. Early diagnosis and intervention are key to managing AD effectively. To learn more about AD and a potential treatment option, visit treatallzearly.com. That's treatallzearly.com. This message is brought to you by AZI.
This is an important notice to all U.S. taxpayers. The IRS is giving away billions of dollars in tax savings through a federal program called the Fresh Start Initiative to aid delinquent taxpayers. This initiative was established for anyone facing financial hardship and unable to pay their back taxes. Qualifying and enrolling in this program will stop all collections, settle your delinquent tax problem, and even reduce what you owe by thousands of dollars. Call the hotline at People's Tax Relief to see if you qualify and get this free information by dialing 800-283-2427. If you have unfiled tax returns or cannot afford to pay your personal or business back taxes, you can now get the help you need. One simple phone call can resolve your tax problem and save you thousands of dollars. To see if you qualify and to get this important free information, call 800-283-2427, 800-283-2427, 800-283-2427.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you, when we fight, we win. The Youth Justice Coalition is challenging America's addiction to incarceration and discrimination. YJC works to dismantle policies leading to mass incarceration, law enforcement violence, and the school-to-prison pipeline. Their approach? Transformative justice, community intervention, free LA high school, legal defense, and system monitoring. YJC promotes safety without relying on prisons. Their goal? Prevent system contact and help people exit the system through direct action, advocacy, and education. Want to get involved or need help? Call 323-235-4243. That's 323-235-4243. Join YJC in creating change. When we fight, we win. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice for justice. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash.
It's me, Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash. I see those dry elbows, baby. But don't worry, get moisturized right in the shower. So hydrated you can skip the lotion after.
Don't wanna see it dry no more. Skin so moisturized with body wash.
Look at you now, no more dry skin. Your skin gets the moisture it craves with
Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I certainly hope that our listeners this afternoon are paying very close attention to the institutional memory of Congressman Bobby Scott. Institutional memory. We hear all of this talk about getting rid of Democrats and bringing young folk in. You cannot get rid of institutional memory. No other champion in the Congress of the United States has had a broader reach on the question of the Constitution and saving democracy over his entire career than Congressman Bobby Scott. Bobby, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Well, thank you, Jesse. It's good to be here.
Bobby, I'm so glad you're here. Let me ask you a question, maybe or two, and then we will ask you to conclude for us on a word of hope. Bobby, share with our listeners the work that you've been doing over your career on the question of criminal justice reform, the state of criminal justice reform, and where we're going.
Well, criminal justice reform is easy, but you first have to make a choice as to what you're doing. Are you following slogans and sound bites, or are you following evidence and research? If you follow evidence and research, you can put together a package that will reduce crime and save money. Basically, a lot of prevention, rehabilitation, things of that nature actually reduce crime and save money. If you're trying to get politicians elected, nice little sound bites, like if you do the adult crime, you do the adult time. That try more juveniles as adults has been studied. It actually increases the crime rate. And yet people campaign on it because it sounds like you're doing something. 3 strikes and you're out. All these little slogans, all they do is load up the prisons, but do nothing to reduce crime. And so criminal justice reform is easy. All you have to do is decide that you're going to follow evidence and research. But if you have a proposal, you should show your evidence that it actually will reduce crime. You talked about mandatory minimums. Mandatory minimum requires a judge to impose a minimum, at least a minimum sentence, regardless of the circumstances. Now, that sentence might make sense, and then it could be imposed. And if it doesn't make any sense, it has to be imposed anyway. What? Why would anybody do that? Because you sound tough on crime and helps the politicians get elected. And so you have people getting decades worth of crime for things that, if the judge had discretion, might get you 6 months. But that's how you reform crime. Get people to go with evidence and research, and not slogans and sound bites. And the rest is easy. Another thing on police reform, if people will notice that a lot of police reform, you don't have to wait for Congress to do it. You can do it locally. The city council and mayor can control the police, can insist on certain reforms, and the prosecutor can decide, can make a lot of decisions, who gets prosecuted and who doesn't. A lot of reform can take place locally by making sure you're electing the right prosecutor, and you're insisting that city council have the reforms in place with their police.
Congressman, it has been said that we have never witnessed a constitutional threat, a threat to the Constitution on the scale that we're presently experiencing it. Can you share with us what that means? And then my final question to you would be, please provide us with a word of hope.
Well, the constitutional crisis, quite frankly, is not Donald Trump violating the law. It's the Republicans in Congress silently letting them get away with it without any complaint, without even asking the question. You have checks and balances all over the place. Every time you do something, there's somebody right in front of you who can block it. And unless the people in positions step up, we'll have a problem. And so long as there's the Republicans in Congress essentially eliminate the legislative branch from any consideration, we're going to have problems. The courts have been good, but they're naturally slow. So the constitutional crisis is just coming from the fact that the Republicans aren't doing anything. There's also a crisis in civil rights. When you get these people talking about they oppose diversity, we had a name for people like that back in the civil rights era. We called them segregationists. How are you against diversity? And they are just aggressive in their approach, making sure that we do not have diversity. I mean, that's a crisis in civil rights that we haven't seen in 50 years.
You know, I find it fascinating that that the vernacular has changed, that we don't call them segregationists, but that's exactly what they're fighting for. That is exactly the end result of their attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I try not to use the terms DEI because it sounds like a federal alphabet, but diversity. I mean, we're black, we're brown, we're white, we're red, yellow, brown, black, and white. Reverend Jesse Jackson said, we're all precious in God's sight. We're all somebody. We all have equal protection of the laws. The 14th Amendment is on our side. It just seems that they are trying to use these buzzwords. They give great speeches. That's what you said. They give great speeches, but they have no meaning and no substance.
Well, they have meaning. They're trying to eliminate integration by attacking diversity. Of course, equity. There's a saying that says that for those who are used to privilege, equality seems like oppression. Well, that's what you got now. But I mean, it is what it is, and we have to stand up and make sure that they don't change the policies on civil rights. And yes, to try to end up on a good note, people ask, what's the Democratic plan? Well, if you look at the first year or 2 years of the Biden administration, you can see what the plan is: American Rescue Plan Act, transportation, the IRA, where we put stimulus checks, a lot of money in the families' pockets, the child tax credit that lowered child poverty, more money in the K through 12 education than we've ever put before, including money in education, including historically black colleges and universities. We reduced healthcare costs. We biggest investment in climate change in the history of the United States, lowered drug prices. That's our plan. And if we're back in control, that's what we'll do.
Congressman, we have about a minute and a half left. I just want to say this before you do conclude. Bobby Scott is the best and brightest teacher of members of Congress. Incoming freshman, we need his institutional memory. Congressman, we have about 1 minute before the show ends. Please share with us a word of hope in these very difficult times.
Well, we have to recognize that elections have consequences, and we messed up last November. We have to make sure we turn out at every opportunity. But in the meanwhile, we have to make sure that we pressure people who are not checking and balancing. All we need is about 5 Republicans. We have one Republican was running around on this budget thing where they're cutting Medicaid. He has publicly said that 2/3 of his constituents are on Medicaid. Well, how does he get away not voting? How does he get away voting for something like this? We have to put pressure. All we need is 5, and we can turn this whole thing around. So we have a path to victory, but it includes pressuring those between now and the midterms. And in the midterms, we have to show up.
We have to show up at these rallies. We have to show up at these town hall meetings. We have to demand that we hold these Democrats and these Republicans accountable. Our very special guest on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show has been one of Congress's stalwarts, Congressman Bobby Scott, representing the 3rd Congressional District of Virginia since 1993. I'm proud to call him a friend. Bobby, thank you for spending this time with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Jesse. Keep up the good work.
And I hope you'll come back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
No problem.
I look forward to it. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Congress's best and brightest, Congressman Bobby Scott, has been our very special guest on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We look forward to having him back in the future. Until next time.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.